Welcome to Food Friends, a podcast inspiring home cooks to try new dishes in the kitchen by sharing trusted recipes, tips, and friendship. Hi, I'm Sonia.
And I'm Carrie. We met in Los Angeles over 15 years ago as personal chefs and haven't stopped talking about food since. We're so glad you're here. Hi, Sonia.
Hi, Carrie.
Sonia, what was your best bite this week?
I've been really excited to talk to you all week, Carrie, because I hosted a dinner party this past week. It was a Shabbat dinner, which are just my favorite kinds of dinners to host. And I made something we've talked about before, but we haven't talked about it in a long time, and it's stuffed shells.
Ooh, one of my favorites.
I know, I feel like it was very Carrie inspired. And usually for Shabbat, I usually do meat. I don't usually do vegetarian, but at one point we were going to have our vegetarian friends over. So that's where the idea came. And then they couldn't come, but it still made sense. I was like, I'm not going to change my menu. I'm going to make stuffed shells. Why not? Stuffed shells, any time of year, people are happy to have it. So the menu, I kept it really simple. I also feel like maybe I was channeling you. I was like, don't overcomplicate it. You can make this really simple. Also, one of my guests I know is an extremely talented cook. She asked, what should I bring? And normally I always say nothing, but I knew it was going to be a hectic day. And I was like, let someone bring something. So I'm so happy I did because she brought the most beautiful salad. So I'll just tell you, the menu wasn't that many items, but I wouldn't say it was the simplest menu. I made homemade challah, which is always a crowd favorite. I planned to have stuffed shells. I had my friend bring a salad. And for dessert, I baked a strawberry rhubarb pie.
Oh my gosh.
and for appetizers, I made a homemade fava bean mint dip.
Oh,
and
wow.
Just put out
what did you serve it with?
Some really good crackers and chips, and then I cut up just some vegetables. And that was sort of out when people arrived. We had some fava bean dip, which turned out also people were really excited about fava beans. Just something light and easy, mostly store-bought. But let me talk about the shells, because everything else we've talked about before. So I used Ina Garten's recipe as my starting point because I looked at several recipes, and the reason I went with hers was she adds spinach to her filling, and I think that's important. A lot of them don't have spinach. They have a lot of cheese, and I like a little more balance because it is a rich dish.
I like spinach in mine too, and also I think it's prettier. The
Prettier.
red, the white, the green is just a prettier presentation, and it tastes better, so it's like a no-brainer for me.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's really simple. You boil off some pasta shells. You make a filling. It's with ricotta cheese, a little bit of shredded mozzarella, Parmesan or Pecorino, a package of frozen spinach. Now, I will say you have to really thaw and then squeeze out the moisture in the spinach.
Yes.
That is the key. Otherwise, you're going to have watery shells, and no one wants that. Then you add that squeezed and dried spinach. I didn't even add egg to my filling. I was like, I don't think this even needs egg. You can add your seasonings, whether it's garlic, whether it's Italian seasoning, salt and pepper. I added a little fresh thyme because I love fresh thyme in my lasagna, and so I liked it here as well. And then you put tomato sauce on the bottom, fill your shells, and you can sprinkle a little bit more shredded cheese on top, which I like because then you get kind of a melty crust. And I do think adding enough tomato sauce is the other key. You don't want this to be dry. I may have added a little extra. And you kind of just like make it on a bed of tomato sauce, but then you spoon extra tomato sauce in between the shells. I made that hours ahead of time. I put that in my fridge, and then it only takes about 30 minutes in the oven. So when my guests arrived, I put it in the oven. And that way it was like I had 30 minutes to just enjoy everyone spending time together while that pasta's reheating.
And then everyone is eating that incredible dip that you've made, but your house is starting to smell like these incredible shells. I mean, people must have just lost their mind.
I think one of my guests said something like, this is so simple and so good. And I do normally make things that are a little more complicated, especially for Shabbat. But I think that, and I'm not saying this is actually so uncomplicated. Stuffed shells or lasagnas like do take a little bit of assembling, but none of it's hard. And there's just something that universally people feel like this is homey food. This is the kind of food you want at someone's house that's different than what you get at a restaurant.
Yeah, and I also think you can make those shells a couple of days ahead of time if you don't have time, and they can sit. And I've frozen them before and pulled them out of the freezer. It's such a thoughtful, homemade version of something that I think everyone loves too.
The last thing I'll say is since I was already making all these stuffed shells, I decided to double the recipe and put some in those little tinfoil freezer containers, and I froze it because I feel like this is an amazing thing to give to someone if you're on a meal train or if you have last minute guests. Like, I just feel really good knowing there's a whole set of stuffed shells in my freezer. And also, if I'm already going to go through the work of boiling pasta, making a filling, it's so easy to just do 2 batches.
I think that's a really great tip. And it's great to know that you have that in your back pocket for you when you just come home one day and you're just like, oh, what am I even going to make? You can still have a really nice home cooked meal straight from your freezer that you sort of saved for yourself a couple of months before that.
Exactly. Well, Carrie, what was your best bite of the week?
Well, Sonia, what's funny is I also hosted this past week, and I've been wanting to talk about it with you because it was not my best work.
Oh,
And when you just said, oh, I took your advice, I didn't overcomplicate things, I did not take my advice.
oh no.
I made too many dishes, and I made too many new dishes. That's a rule that I definitely broke this time because I had some friends coming over. We had this date on the books, and I just said, like, I'd love to cook. I have all these new recipes that I want to taste and try. I think I just made too many new things that I'm not used to making. When they arrived, I was still kind of in process of cooking. And the dish that I was most excited to make and also to talk to you about is a recipe I saw in the New York Times a couple of weeks ago called butter swim biscuits.
That sounds incredible.
By the way, talk about a well-named recipe. I was like, what is this? What's amazing about the recipe itself is that you make it in a Pyrex, like a casserole dish, and you stick your casserole dish in the oven with butter and you heat it up, and then you make this pretty basic biscuit batter with just flour, leavening, salt, and buttermilk. It's a batter, and then you pour that into this heated melted butter, and the batter kind of swims in the butter, and the videos of it are so beautiful. I don't know if it's like my oven was slow or whatever. I wanted it to be more brown on the top. The bottom was definitely very buttery, and my friends loved it. I feel like maybe it just needed more time. Maybe I should have broiled it a little bit. It just was softer than I wanted it to be.
Do you think it's possible your oven was a little low and it could have baked for longer? Because my new oven in my new place that I'm living in, it's so much slower than my older oven. And I find that certain recipes, like I need a solid 10 to 15 minutes longer than their recipe set.
Yeah, I think that might have been the problem. And I think any other time, if I was just making that recipe, I would have taken myself through those steps of, you don't have to pull this now. You can like get it a little bit more cooked. Because I was just kind of frazzled doing too many other things. I was pulling things off the grill. And I had made this really great salad, which we just released on our Substack. It's a 7-layer salad, except mine is 10 layers. You make it ahead of time and you stick it in the fridge and it can sit there for a couple of days. And so I had made that and I pulled that out. And my friends really loved that. And they did love the biscuits, but
Yeah.
I just think it was too many new dishes. I wish that I had planned to spend more time with my friends, which is something that you said, like you made your dip a couple of days ahead of time. You served it with things that you bought from the grocery store. And I wish that I had kind of settled myself that way and spent more time with my friends instead of really trying to kind of test recipes for a bunch of people that were coming to my house.
Well, look, I think you're being hard on yourself a little bit. Let's be fair. I really do. And I've been there. I'm not judging you for being hard on yourself because I've been hard on myself. And I think we're all often hardest on ourselves. Like you just said with the biscuits, you're like, I wasn't crazy about the recipe, but your friends really liked it, right? I've been in that situation too, where I've made something, even the strawberry rhubarb pie. When I first ate it, I was like, this isn't as good as the other strawberry rhubarb pie I made a month ago. That pie was like the best pie I've ever made. Why is this pie different? Who knows? Not 1% at my table thought that, right? But I thought that. And I think we have those moments. But I remembered, okay, everyone loves the pie, even if I don't think it's quite as good as the last one I made. big deal. Who doesn't want a homemade pie? Who doesn't want homemade biscuits, even if they're mediocre, which I'm sure they weren't. But I also think there's this piece of the learning from it, right? Like I'm
Right.
learning, I've been in your shoes too, where I've made new dishes, I've made too many things, I set the bar too high. And I also learned from those experiences. I doubt that your friends could tell the difference, but it's good for you to know, well, next time maybe I won't make it so complicated.
Well, and I think one of the pieces when I was sitting there and I was like, these biscuits are fine, I didn't say that. We just talked to Adam Roberts about his new book, and we talked about how he hosts all the time. And we sort of talked through this idea of if you talk about how it wasn't as good as you thought it was going to be, then everyone else kind of agrees with you. And I think to your point of saying like my pie wasn't as good as the one that I previously knew, but you didn't say that. It's like,
No,
who
yeah.
doesn't want someone to make them a homemade pie? I would be thrilled to have been at your table that night. And I would never have known the difference between the previous one and the one that was in front of me. And so I really held that. I kept all of that to myself, and I really
Yeah.
wanted to talk to you about it. But I didn't like how I felt when I was hosting. And that's part of what I'm really trying to take away from this experience is that I want to be a relaxed host. And I have to remember that when I'm hosting, being in the kitchen is not the priority. And that's a switch from having been a personal chef and a caterer that I am still always working on. So I think just a reminder of where your strengths lie and where your strengths don't lie is a good thing to think about when you invite people over to your house.
Well, and without getting too therapeutic in this conversation, it's great that you didn't bring it up. I agree. I've learned my lesson. I used to always say when things weren't how I wanted them or I thought they didn't turn out good, I really have to hold my tongue now. I just don't do that. That's something I had to learn over many years because I agree with everything we had talked about before. But I also think it's important to let it out. That's why we have this space. That's why we have Food Friends,
Yeah.
because saying, hey, I can tell you how I really felt. And also, here's what I learned, and here's what I won't do again. It sounds like those biscuits don't need to be your go to biscuit recipe, which is a good thing to realize. It sounds like the salad is a total winner. Sounds stunning. We shared it on our Substack so people can also make it for themselves. It reminds me so much of Soviet style layered salads. I'm obsessed with it. I think it's genius and looks delicious. And every situation in life can be like that. You have dinner
Right.
parties where every single thing is a win, but most of the time you have dinner parties where most of the stuff was amazing. Some of it maybe wasn't as good as you wanted it to be, but everyone had a good time. And I know that you're saying that you didn't feel great about it all, but I imagine everyone at your table was really happy to be there and left happy.
I think you're right. And I think it's just learning from the experience and taking with you what you've learned and making it a little bit better next time.
But Carrie, can you walk me through the whole menu? Because I still want to get a complete image of everything you made.
So I made corn ribs on the grill. And I made grilled mushrooms and I made them buffalo style, like one of the recipes that we talked about recently. And then I had that salad and I saw those biscuits. I wanted to serve those biscuits with the buffalo mushrooms as like a little sandwich. And so I was piling these buffalo grilled mushrooms. Those were really delicious. I won't use blue cheese next time. I just don't love blue cheese myself.
Yeah, also a good thing to know.
Yes. And then I also made these little packets of fruit that I wrapped up. It was fruit en papillote. That was a recipe that we talked about too, where you wrap up fresh fruit. I used apricots, cherries, pistachios, vanilla bean, butter, brown sugar. You wrap it up into tinfoil and then you put it on your grill. And the fruit gets really soft and buttery and sweet. And then we poured that over ice cream. So that was also
Wow.
delicious. It was just too ambitious.
This sounds like stuff to feel bad about for sure. No, I mean, first of all, I love this report that the buffalo mushrooms are delicious. We'll relink those. I love that you made the fruit en papillote on the grill. We'll link those again. Those sounded delicious when you first brought them up and sound even more delicious now. I love that you shared the salad, which definitely I think sounds like a showstopper. And okay, so the biscuits weren't perfect, but I hear you. It was too many things. It was an ambitious meal. I think we've all been there. And I'm actually really grateful to hear this because it keeps reminding me when I plan my next dinner party to think about these things.
Yeah, to keep it simple, to do what you did, which is keep it simple and keep it relaxed, because that's why people have come to your house in the first place.
Yeah. That's right. Well, I love that we both had dinner party reports, and I can't wait to hear about your next best bite of the week.
Until next time.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks for being our food friend.
If you enjoyed our podcast, please subscribe, leave us a review, and share this episode with friends. We love hearing from you, so follow us on Instagram or drop us a line at foodfriendspodcast.com.
Yes, we'd love to hear from you and your food friends. Happy cooking and eating.